Hello, welcome to this recording of Creators and Wizards. A bug stopped the original recording from happening. Unfortunate because we had our first guest speaker talking about OCaml. Devs, do you know OCaml? Thank you so much to our guest speaker, Sabine. I'm so sorry that we didn't get the full recording. I've edited it down. Hopefully you guys get the gist of what we talked about. All right, here we go. OCaml with Sabine and What the Doodle.
So OCaml is a multi-paradigm language that is primarily functional. It has a garbage collector. Values are immutable by default. There's powerful type inference in the sense that the type checker is often able to figure out the types by itself. It's been around since 1996, but always lack of tooling has been plaguing OCaml, which has only recently gotten a lot better to the point that OCaml is now an interesting language to try. Okay, let's start with the question of like integrating OCaml and JavaScript. So I can tell you how it's done on OCaml.org. And OCaml.org is built on the Dream web framework. This is an OCaml web framework that is pretty minimalist, but very much following best practices from other ecosystems. So someone who's used Sinatra or Flask would feel right at home with Dream. We also use HTMX and Alpine.js, and we just write our JavaScript in JavaScript files and inside the templates, since we don't use a lot of JavaScripts on OCaml.org. So it's not a highly interactive web application, it's just a website, and we keep things simple by relying on HTMX and Alpine.js. However, I've seen other projects use Melange. Melange is a really great project from Antonio Montero, who has been working on this for a bunch of years now. And this is a compiler from OCaml to JavaScript that also makes it easy to integrate with existing JavaScript code. I haven't personally tried it, but everyone I talk to is very happy about this project. As an alternative to JS of OCaml, which is another project that compiles OCaml to JavaScript. Other than that, personally, I'm kind of a fan of frameworks like SvelteKit and Solid, and these come with TypeScript support, so it's not very hard to make an API in OCaml and interface that with a TypeScript frontend by generating types for both sides. And making sure that the API endpoints match up. I gave a talk about this at BobConf in March. The talk was titled Your Own Typesafe API Spec Domain-Specific Language, I think. I'm not exactly sure I got the title right, but I really like this topic of interfacing with other typesafe languages. As I understand, there's currently two projects that work on compiling OCaml to WebAssembly. The progress is not as far as Rust, because Rust also has WebAssembly bind gen, this kind of thing, where it interfaces very well with the rest of the world. And I think OCaml doesn't have that yet, but it has a usable WebAssembly backend. But I have not been following this very closely yet, because I'm kind of in a position where I think like, okay, WebAssembly will be awesome when we have frameworks like Solid.js or Svelte in other languages like OCaml, so that we don't have to use TypeScript and then compile that to WebAssembly. But for that, WebAssembly first needs to get their thing in order relating to accessing the DOM from WebAssembly. So, or interface with JavaScript. It's still pretty slow, as I understand. But when this becomes fast, believe that WebAssembly-based frameworks for frontend could spring up.
Yes, so WebAssembly is, so Sabine is absolutely right. WebAssembly under Rust is a little bit further along, but WebAssembly in some ways is almost like a purely functional, because it can't actually do anything other than interface via a linear chunk of memory. So when it interopts with JavaScript, everything has to be shoehorned into this linear chunk of memory, basically. So even
Yes.
types don't yeah, even types don't exist. They just disappear. So we go back to the bad old days of assembly. Now, obviously, there is automation around that because we use, certainly under Rust, we use bindgen, as Sabine has mentioned, and that's kind of like under Haskell, where you can do like declare and derive and all that. Not declare, sorry, apologies. Derive annotations. In Rust, we have that similar bindgen, and we declare that, and it does all of the kind of horrible nitty-gritty marshalling of the actual memory in and out. And it's fine for Rust because Rust doesn't have a GC, so therefore that works perfectly fine. Now, other languages, managed languages, for example, like C#, Java, and whatnot, because at the moment there is an experimental GC, I believe, for WASM. But at the moment, if you want to do that, for example, like Blazor, so people who use C# and Blazor, what is kind of crazy because they actually shove an entire CLR runtime, so a big fat runtime. And then so you can imagine this big, massive fat runtime in your application, which may be just a few kilobytes, and they just pop that on top. So
yeah, in this regard, OCaml is pretty lucky because it has a very small runtime. Even compared to Haskell, it has a very small runtime. But yeah, this is exactly how it goes. Like the language which are garbage collected, they have to ship their runtime, and there will be some overhead always. And then there's the work going on with WebAssembly and linking. So I think as soon as these kind of runtimes can be cached properly by content delivery networks, that will put these these languages in a better position. So much happening in this space.
Yeah, I think once the GC, the native GC for WASM actually stabilizes, I think what will happen is that people will be able to use that as opposed to that they can have a default. Yeah. So therefore that fatter runtime can suddenly disappear. And that's what most people are waiting for. And but it will be very exciting because the main thing that I'm hyper excited about WASM, and one thing about Bob, by the way, you mentioned about Lisp. You absolutely must learn Lisp. And the reason I say this is that it is essentially the. I mean, I have massive respect for Lisp because I think it's the grandfather of not only AI, but it's the grandfather of functional programming, but it's also the grandfather of even the if conditional statement was actually invented, as well as garbage collection was invented under Lisp. I believe.
And another reason to learn Lisp is that the way you usually learn Lisp is writing your own Lisp, and exactly, obviously that's cool as fuck. So.
Yeah, I mean the metacircular evaluator. So essentially, it's such a mind bend because see the thing is a lot of people say, well, what language is Lisp? And Lisp is the languageless language. So it's a language that doesn't have a language because it is the pure abstract syntax tree so the homoiconicity, which basically says that the data is actually code and code is data. It makes no differentiation. It's a complete mind bend. And yeah, so building a metacircular evaluator is next level. And I do believe, and I think one of the things about Lisp, I think it's an eternal language. The reason I say that is I believe Lisp was more discovered as sort of a mathematical property than anything that was actually genuinely sat down and designed, because I believe there's only like 7 terms or something. And I don't want to get into numerology. So some numerologist is going to shoot me now or something. But the number 7 itself is very interesting in the universe because it is a number. It's a bit like the golden ratio and those other numbers that seems to crop up weirdly in the universe again and again. If we're in a simulation, that probably would be one signage of that. But anyway, Lisp is an eternal. I believe it's an eternal language. So if we didn't discover it, kind of like Pythagoras and someone else down the road would.
Okay, so yeah, let's start with the binary size comparison. I'm not entirely sure about how OCaml fares in terms of binary size. I have not checked that. I just know it compiles really fast, like similarly a fast compiler as Go, and also similarly fast, even faster than Go in many cases. In terms of compiling, but in terms of runtime speed, is on par with Go mostly. So it means it's slower than C. But binary size, I haven't looked at that. So let me answer the other question instead about biggest programming challenge. I think there's two, and they are very different. So the biggest programming challenge I faced right after quitting academia, because I wanted to build a social network that is also a database and has advanced search features for people who saw. And I knew basically nothing about web development. Like I knew TCP because that was part of the curriculum, but I mean, knowing TCP is like not a thing you can build something with. So the biggest challenge there was just really starting from nothing, having a vision of what to build, and then learning all of these things step by step, putting in the work every day, learning a new thing, building a new feature, fixing the bugs. And I built so many things that users did not need nor want. So I wrote a lot of code and I threw away a lot of code. I wrote horrible interfaces and then I wrote better interfaces thanks to user feedback. And yeah, I think so. One of the biggest technical challenge was really seeing quite plainly that yes, I can solve all the technical problems. I can implement all the things, but it's worth nothing when I implement the wrong things. And yeah, and this is still a challenge. I think for many people, like seeing what is the simple and good solution that's also maintainable and not too complex, but does the thing that people need. Yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge. not camel, no, not crab, and not camel either, because I only use OCaml since 2022, and I learned Rust before that. I'm not great at either. but good enough to be dangerous and do things. The Rust and OCaml thing that's been going probably because I've been posting a lot of camels under people's posts and also commenting favorably on Rust because I also really like Rust. Yeah, I'm not different. Yeah, I've definitely not been hired to do DevRel, so but it seems I'm gravitating into this role, and it seems like I might be leading a DevRel team before the end of the year is over, and just because, yeah, it's weird. I never wanted to do DevRel, but I do want to build community, like, and I want OCaml to become better, and I want the OCaml ecosystem to become amazing so that we can have frameworks where you can really build something, ship it, and make money with it. So this whole story of making OCaml software as a service ready that Leandro is pushing is exactly the thing I want to happen. It just makes me, yeah, happy to see when people can build things, because I'm coming from this successless indie hack kind of background where I spent so many years just trying to build things and try different languages in the hope to find one where I don't shoot myself in the foot constantly. And OCaml seems to be one such a language, but it is currently missing the kind of ecosystem that you want to have. So we don't have something as out of the box as Rails or Laravel or some such. And we need this because there are people out there like me who go out there and they say like, okay, I want to build a thing. I want to build a thing that people use, and I want a thing that makes money. And to have that, you need infrastructure, and you need kind of like someone takes charge, build a thing, attract contributors to help with this, so we can have the same cool thing in OCaml, a language that is very good for building huge projects that you can safely refactor, which is kind of exactly the kind of projects I was doing. So it's a long story.
So I just wanted to get back to why there seems to be this correspondence between Haskell and OCaml. And I have a theory, because obviously the first version of Rust was written in OCaml. So it's kind of, Rust is kind of like Luke, I'm your father kind of thing.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Totally. But then again, Rust took type classes from Haskell, more or less. So it's kind of like, I mean, Haskell's like kind of the other parent, right?
Yeah, it's a co-parent, and what's happened? It's yeah. I mean, obviously, yeah. It's taken because I think it's part of the ML family, so it's kind of, it just took from two different parents and just meshed it together. Because we actually see quite a lot of people from the Haskell community that kind of moved over. So they were Haskellers, and then they moved over to Rust. Maybe they just got a bit too disillusioned because things were fragmenting a little bit. I mean, there's a load of, I got, I mean, I really liked Haskell, and there's so many cool stuff there.
Oh yeah, same.
But then it just seems like, I don't know, there's some of it seems to be a bit schizophrenic in the sense that you've got almost like two communities in Haskell, where you've got the one side which is purely academic, and they want to do like cool stuff, like, hey, how can we
Oh
bend the
yeah.
laws of physics? Let's just do some
Yeah,
abstract
add
nonsense.
new type system features.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Or even the in-house, so a joke of the zygo, what's it called? Prepomorphism or something? Zygohistoprepom. I can't. It's such a long tongue twister, but it's a joke. It's a sort of internal joke that they make themselves, because they've done the ability to do so much high levels of abstraction is so unlimited that they could do these crazy things, but they almost enjoy it.
yeah,
And
they
then you have,
definitely enjoy it. I mean, this is exactly the problem I had with Haskell. I mean, it was always leading me down this interesting explorations and like, how do I make this even safer? And you would build so much in the type system. It's amazing, but it's also like it's like such a distraction for someone who likes these kind of things.
yeah, there's a practical aspect, and I think so. Then there was this whole. I'm sure you've heard of the boring Haskell movement, and
Yeah,
that
Neo
then
Haskell also.
yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yes, I remember that whole saga. Yeah, so it's really strange, because then the communities kind of are at odds with each other, because one side wants to do abstract stuff and the other stuff wants to do practical stuff. And so
yeah,
I feel that OCaml is kind of more the practical side. It can do cool stuff as well. You can do
yeah,
cool stuff in the type system, but if you want to get day to day, if you want to do stuff, it's there. And I think that's maybe
yeah,
why there's a lot of interest, and why it's so hot right now. That's
yeah.
why
That's
everyone's kind
true.
of looking at it. But yeah,
Abstraction
you yeah.
stealing is definitely lower in OCaml, and it's
Mm,
disappointing to people coming from Haskell who want this power in the type system.
mm,
So it's kind of like you have this pipeline from Haskell to OCaml with people who just want a practical language that gets things done and keeps people from over abstracting, and you have this other direction from people going from OCaml to Haskell because they feel they can't do enough in the type system. And
mm.
that's fair. That's perfectly fair. Yes. Okay. So the OCaml Caravan, that's an initiative that was originally Dylan Mulroy's Discord, and Dylan Mulroy is kind of also known as the OCaml man, since he originally there was TJ who was pushing OCaml a little, but at some point Dylan Mulroy appeared, and since he had a TypeScript background, he created a lot of content around showing how does certain real life code look like in TypeScript, and how does the same code look like in OCaml. Also gave conference talks and had a Twitch where he started OCaml and coffee streaming every day at the same time for weeks. Uh, until he was rated by the Primogen and also TJ, and he built a pretty big audience relatively quickly. So I kind of Dylan, I really hope we gonna get Dylan back to to a company where he can write OCaml. So currently he works, I think, at Versa. Not sure exactly, but it's a pity because we really need him in OCaml land. Anyway, so Dylan created a Discord for his Twitch channel, but at some point, he realized, there's no more OCaml streamers popping up, and they don't have Discord. So Dylan decided to extend the space to host multiple Twitch streamers and have these go live notifications appear in the Caravan Discord, and that's pretty awesome. So turns out that we would hang out in each other's chats and comment and basically be around a lot on Twitch. That was very cool, I think. So personally on Twitch, when I stream about OCaml. So I don't stream about other languages. I don't really stream about unrelated stuff. It's OCaml or nothing. And it can be different things like fixing a bug. So the very first stream I did was awful. So I thought like, okay, well, I don't know what to stream about. So let's stream about fixing an issue on the documentation generation. And I thought that would be a simple thing to do, a small thing just to fix that, go in there, fix it, go out and be happy and celebrate with chat. And be like, okay, cool. But no, that turned into a saga of like, I think 7 or 8 installments until the bug was somewhat fixed. And yeah, that was a pretty rough start streaming, but on the other hand side, that was pretty good because it showed people that even the people working on OCaml and its tooling, they struggle with hard issues. Like sometimes there's issues that are not obvious to solve, and I don't know. I've also been rated by the Primogen, which is like pretty wild. Like you just do your thing, and then suddenly you have 2,000 people in the channel, and it's like the chat is moving so fast. I don't know how he can do that. It's so wild, and anyways, sometimes I do small open source contributions on stream. Don't know. I mean, I stream when I feel like it, pretty much. I also started a little show where I wanted to interview people, but then I got distracted. So I do Show Me OCaml, where OCaml people can present some OCaml code, and we chat about the code or the library and what it's for. So someone open sourcing something in OCaml, I would love to have them on my stream. Just to talk about the thing they built. So that's pretty much it. So it's oh, and I did read. So when TJ read the NeoVim manual, I started reading the OCaml manual. But it's awful to read. Like, there's code examples in there, and reading code examples is just hell. But it was fun. I should continue. I didn't finish that actually. Okay, so I had a very lucky start on Twitch. I had an audience basically right away, and that was for two reasons. So reason number one was that I knew the other OCaml streamers. So Dylan would raid me, and Leandro would raid me, and eventually the Primogen would raid me simply because they knew I existed from Twitter. So it is much easier to start streaming when you have a little audience on Twitter that you can announce to that you're streaming, and they come in, and then you are not an empty channel anymore. So the hardest is being alone in the room. That's kind of demotivating, right? So the best you can do when you start streaming is to have people who will raid you on Twitch. Because then you have some people in the channel, you can chat with them, and chatting with them is really key on Twitch because people go there because they want to interact with you. They put questions in the chat. So you read out the question, answer them, talk to them. Just be there, and don't expect to write a lot of great code. So I mistype so much on stream. It's awful. Like in real life, I mistype so much less. But on stream, it's like you're doing all these things at the same time, and it's awfully hard at first. And you absolutely must not beat yourself up over it. You just say like, okay, it is what it is, and people still like you even if you mistype or do something goofy, or maybe they even like you more because you're human. I don't know.
Yeah, I think mistyping I think that's natural. I think that's actually, if you started not making any mistakes, they would say you're an AI basically. So you need to separate.
Yeah, or too perfect a person, unrelatable. Yeah.
Exactly, because I mean it's all natural, isn't it? If you've ever been coding and you're pair programming, or someone's over your shoulder watching you, at that moment your fingers just don't work anymore, and it's like, I know how to type.
Yeah, exactly. But the first time I streamed, so there was a first time I streamed, and that was not on Twitch, but that was on the Rust Discord. And so in the first minute, someone comes in and tells me like in a dismissive way, like you should be using multi-cursor. And I had no idea what multi-cursor was. I was so intimidated, even just streaming at this point. So I stopped it for a long while. But in the meantime, I had learned how to use multi-cursor, and now life is good. Personally, I had a very easy time writing OCaml because I knew Haskell, and I had already done this kind of shift to a syntax that is bracketless, where a partial application of functions is the norm instead of a thing you can't really do or can only do by explicitly writing closures. So going from Haskell to OCaml was like basically immediately productive. So just struggling on syntax a few times and then go time. Regarding procedural languages, other languages like C, I can write perfectly fine C. Still, it's just different. It's really just switching between these. So I feel like for some languages that I have used less than C, it's a thing about like relearning the syntax quirks. Like, was it a comma? Was it semicolon? Was it a So these kind of things. But overall, it's usually pretty quick to switch between these. Regarding what OCaml should replace, I wish it could replace Python, but I think this is a pipe dream right now. Simply because, OCaml is so much safer than Python. It is faster than Python. It is also very, very expressive. And Python is a great language because of being expressive. And I feel like, yeah, that's pretty much what it has going for it. And if OCaml could have an ecosystem like Python, I would be so happy.
Yeah, I think that would. Sorry, Bob, go ahead.
I'd love to go ahead, but this is post-recording. This is 2 weeks ago, and I don't have the recording of Bob. I'm so sorry. Thank you, What the Doodle. But back to you guys.
Right now, I would say no. Simply because of the lack of ecosystem. So things you can do very well in OCaml right now is like CLI applications. So we have a really, really cute terminal UI framework inspired by the Charm CLI by Bubble Tea. So Leandro Ostera ported Bubble Tea to OCaml basically. And as we ported that, it simplified so much. The code is so much simpler in OCaml that is really nice. So it's an Elm-like for building UI in the terminal. You can do web in OCaml, but there's always going to be some libraries missing still. So at this point, I think OCaml is amazing if you wanna become a library author and do cool things, or if you are building a really huge thing where you benefit enough from having this refactorability and maintainability over having to invest in building things that some other ecosystems like Python have. Though in Python, you also go through libraries a lot of times and find so many shitty libraries. I really had to learn to distinguish like a good Python library from a bad one because I was always using the bad ones until I learned to read the code always. So OCaml is a multi-paradigm language that is primarily functional. It has a garbage collector. Values are immutable by default. There's powerful type inference in the sense that the type checker is often able to figure out the types by itself. It's been around since 1996, but always lack of tooling has been plaguing OCaml, which has only recently gotten a lot better to the point that OCaml is now an interesting language to try. So the impressive thing that OCaml is being used for is by Jane Street. Jane Street is a trading firm that moves billions of money, I don't know, or maybe even trillions. I don't know exactly how much, but it's huge amounts. And maybe you have seen Jane Street around funding conferences, basically giving away free money for initiatives related to functional programming. And Jane Street runs on OCaml. Jane Street is also pushing OCaml development to oxidize OCaml, which essentially means to make OCaml more like Rust, to have a way to declare values that will not allocate via the garbage collector and to make OCaml much faster. So Jane Street writes a lot of weird OCaml, non-idiomatic, in a sense that they try to write code that does not allocate because every millisecond, every nanosecond in their space counts to move the trade faster. Also, the Tezos blockchain is heavily used.
Everybody started talking over each other here. Basically, the Tezos blockchain is heavily using it.
Sorry about that. I don't like to talk about blockchain. Yeah, it's a pretty solid language.
The other aspect as well is writing languages. So Rust, for example, was written in OCaml. That's another nod to what else is also useful for.
Oh, yeah, right. And the flow type checker and some other static analysis tooling is Facebook internal kind of tools. Static analysis tools are also often written in OCaml because OCaml is a very beautiful language for writing anything that has a parser, lexer, and then generates some code.
And then this guy.
Hey, oh no, I wish quantum mechanics. It's mostly just computational fluid dynamics.
Oh, it's only computational fluid dynamics. Yep, that's easy.
Yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. I mean, at this point, I think no one can get Python out there because Python is coming with the operating system. And OCaml is not, right? I mean, it's just like you can't capture the space. Also, Python is a very friendly language to beginners cargo culting along building their Django apps. And OCaml is a bit more higher learning curve in the sense that you do have to please the type checker. You have to understand the type system, even though the type system is relatively simple. It's definitely for a little bit more advanced users than beginners starting out who might learn Python instead. And yeah, there is a lot of space where we just would need to have libraries like around the machine learning pipelines that would make OCaml very interesting.
I think one potential thing that the OCaml community could consider is just like how there was CoffeeScript, where there was another language that transpiled to JavaScript, but then added a different kind of syntax look to it. Potentially, there could be some kind of Python OCaml, so like some kind of syntax that is actually looks like Python, but behind the scenes it just transpiles to OCaml, and that could be a way to sneakily get the Pythonistas without realizing that the Python is sitting on top of OCaml. Basically, you get your ride on top of OCaml.
Yeah, actually, OCaml already has a different syntax. So there is ReasonML, which is an alternative syntax for OCaml, but it's not close to Python. It's more close to TypeScript. So it has more braces and more parentheses. So it's often perceived as friendlier by people coming from TypeScript and languages that have braces.
Yes, obviously Python isn't going to go anywhere, so I don't think you have to worry about anything about there. I'll quickly, as Bob mentioned, I'm a senior Rust engineer, and one of the projects I've took on recently, I'm just at the moment because I'm burnt out and I just procrastinate over everything. I just only do things out of passion. Even my YouTube stuff was because somebody wrote something against Rust, and I was like, damn it, I'm not going to take that line down. This is technically wrong. I'm going to rip it to shreds. So I jumped on it and I created the YouTube content. And Francesco was the guy that completely, really inspired me. Just seeing the content, the way he's grown and everything. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, because before then I was like, just like you was mentioning earlier, Bob, about imposter syndrome. I was like, I can't do this, and I was like, you know what? Forget it. Just do it. Forget about everything. Just do it. I don't, if people like it, if people resonate, they resonate. If they don't, they don't. Just put yourself out there. Just do it. And that's what I did. And with the new Fetch is a project that a lot of people may be aware of. That was unfortunately closed and archived, and I just felt like, ooh, it'd be nice to create just an alternative, and why not do it in Rust? Because so that's been coming along. It's not mostly working. It is kind of working, and I had my first contribution as well. There was I believe the user was called Good News. He was a junior. He's a junior. He's just learning Rust, and he's like, hey, he was so inspired because I was kind of posting all the updates, and he was like, hey, I'm not really good at Rust. I'm just learning it. Can I help? And I said, of course you can. Go for it. Knock yourself out. And then he did put a couple pull requests, and that was merged in. And it's just about helping each other and bringing people up, really.
Okay, then I guess I'm gonna do a little bit of the outro, and obviously I would love for everyone to try OCaml. Just install it and see if it is for you. We also have open issues on the GitHub repository OCaml.org, which are very suitable for beginners. It's a great place to learn a bit about web development with OCaml, while also giving back to the community. And we always try to review these pull requests, give feedback, and it's just a good place to start. And also the Caravan Discord is a great place to ask questions, because there's people from various backgrounds there. It's really a melting pot of cultures in terms of programming languages. I would love just if people tried OCaml. That would be awesome.